All right, so this one's a little bit of a brain teaser, but it exemplifies a pretty good point about why it's dangerous to use averages. So here we have a question. What is the average and realized return of an investment with the below returns? So we're going to do two calculations. One is for average, and one is for the actual realized. Now, a lot of people, I would say a very high percentage of people, would have a difficult time explaining the difference between these two things because we hear averages all the time about returns, average a lot of things, and averages are quite dangerous because they can be quite inaccurate. So we're going to calculate the average and then the actual realized return, which is what you actually that's how much more money you have or less money, and that's really all you care about. Averages can be kind of a junk statistic, meaning that you produce something but it's of no value. So the average is quite easy. I mean, we just take our observations and divide by the n. So we have our, we'll just do it real quick. So our average return is we have our two returns. So we have 100. So 100% minus 50%, and we have two observations, so we divide by 2, and we end up with an average of 25%. Now that's a correct statement. The average return of that investment is 25%. One year you made 100%, the next year you lost 50%. That means your average return is 25%. But is that really what you care about? Because let's take a look. Let's say you started with $1,000. You started with $1,000 and you made 100%. So that means your $1,000, you make 100% on that. That means you made $1,000 and you started with $1,000. So now you have $2,000. Whoops. Let's just do 2K. And then the second year, so that's year 1 and year 2, you start with 2,000. And you multiply times negative 0.5. And you have what? You lost 1,000. And you started with 2,000, so that means you ended up with what? You only have $1,000, but your average return was 25%. So obviously you don't have any extra money. Well, why is that calculation off? Well, that's because you're using an average where you need to use something called geometric. So we need to only concern ourselves with geometric return. And the formula for geometric return, and it can be is 1 plus R, so R1 times 1 plus R2 times, we'll do the dots, 1 plus Rn, and that whole thing is to the power of 1 over n minus 1. So in this case, our first return was what? Was 100. So we have 1 plus 1 times 1 minus, and it was negative 50, so minus 50, and that whole thing to the power of 1 over 2 minus 1 equals, so we have 2 times 0.5, which will be 1, and the power of 1 to the power of 1/2 is just going to be 1. We can just do it. 1 to the power of 0.5 is 1 minus 1 equals 0. because you actually didn't make any money. Even though your average return was 25%, your actual realized return was 0%. So that is a somewhat of an interesting example of the difference between an average and geometric returns.